Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. This podcast has evolved over the 5+ years since it first launched. From now on, I'm going to be talking about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. And also mindset, of course, but mindset of all kinds, not just business mindset. I think. Things are changing for me, as you may have noticed if you've been following me online or listening to this podcast, so anything goes here. I hope you stay along for the ride. Thank you so much for joining us today, and now let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 280. This is your host, Holly Worton, and I'm back with another solo episode. Today, I'm going to talk about pessimism. This episode is inspired by a question from my Patreon community, which is as follows. Can I ask you a bit more about heart-centered energy work and PSYCH-K mindset work, and the importance of using these sort of techniques to let go of pessimism or prevent pessimism from building up? There's a lot of it about these days. I've noticed that I'm feeling a lot less of this sort of thing since I trained in PSYCH-K. Now, this is an excellent question, and it's something that I really had to think about because I realized I do worry about certain things, but I am not at all a pessimistic person. I don't focus on the negative, and I honestly feel like that is an absolute direct result of having trained in PSYCH-K, working on this stuff with myself, with other people, using heart-centered energy work. Because the basis of mindset work like this and techniques like this is specifically moving away from what you don't want and focusing on what you do want. And I think that, to me, is the foundation of shifting your mind from a pessimistic outlook to an optimistic outlook. So, let's talk about pessimism. We're going to talk about what it is, how to let go of it for good, specific ways that you can release pessimistic attitudes and completely change your outlook in life in terms of whether you see the glass half full, half empty. So let's get started. Pessimism. What is it? I did a little search online, and pessimism is generally considered to be a tendency to see the worst aspect of things or to believe that the worst will happen in our lives, in the world in general. It's the exact opposite of optimism. The tendency to see the glass as half empty rather than half full, and generally focusing on the negative things in life rather than the positive, the difficulties, the challenges, the blocks, the fears, the crap that can fill up and clutter our minds. So, how can you get rid of pessimism for good? How do you let go of it for good? How do you get rid of it? Now, whether or not you consider yourself to be a pessimistic person, I think it can be useful to listen to this episode. So if you think, oh no, I don't have any problems in this, I think there's always room for improvement because honestly, I feel like I have mostly been an optimistic person in life. However, there have been times in my life, particularly the period of time when I was running my first business, where things were really difficult. I was making bad decisions in life. I was involved with a business partner that had wildly different values to mine. And my life just felt really dark and difficult and impossible to change. So I think there was an element of pessimism in there because I don't think I believed that I could ever get myself out of that situation. And obviously I did. So let's talk about how to identify the causes of pessimism because I think that is the first step. So if you're feeling pessimistic, if you're feeling down about your life, if you're feeling hopeless, we can give this a bunch of different words because hopeless is a word that I really resonate with. There have been some things in my life, and even up until recently, even this year, where I felt hopeless about certain situations, particularly my weight. So I've talked about this in previous podcasts, but if you haven't listened to them, you might know or you might not know that I've had a thyroid problem for the last few years, gained a bunch of weight, felt terrible, just really low energy, and was just generally really pissed off and unhappy with my body, but even more so hopeless about the possibility of changing. I did so much mindset work over the last 5 years with myself, with other people, tried all kinds of different don't want to say diets, but kind of ways of eating. And nothing worked. And I felt hopeless. So I am aware that I don't necessarily consider myself to be pessimistic, but I think hopelessness is the same kind of thing. And it wasn't until I found the thing that worked for me, which was a combination of keto and intermittent fasting, that I started not only losing weight, but just experiencing a massive increase in my energy levels and sleeping better and all kinds of other things. So that to me is a very recent example of something that I felt hopeless or pessimistic about that I was able to completely change around. So if you don't resonate with the word pessimistic, things in your life that you feel negative about, that you feel down about, that you feel kind of dark thoughts about, that you feel hopeless about, that you feel like powerless to change, whether it's in your life, in the world, whatever. So maybe sit down with your journal and ask yourself the question, what things am I pessimistic about? This could be people, places, situations. What am I hopeless about? What am I feeling down about? Identify the cause of these pessimistic or hopeless feelings. This is super, super important. And it's the basis of all the mindset work that I've been doing for the last few years. It's the first step. Identify what you are currently experiencing. And in this specific case, identify what you're currently experiencing in terms of pessimism, in terms of hopelessness, in terms of feeling down and dark about life. Pay attention to how this shows up in your life, how pessimism shows up in your life, how hopelessness shows up in your life. Pay attention to your thoughts and write this stuff down. Pay attention to the language that you use when you're speaking to yourself in your mind or when you're speaking to other people. Pay attention to the words that you use, especially the negative language that you use, because that's something that you can very easily turn around using mindset work or by just consciously changing the language that you use. But start by drawing all this stuff to your attention. And I always recommend that you write it down. So have a page or several pages in your journal where you write all this stuff down. Because only by bringing this stuff to your awareness can you change it around. So also look at your fears. Like, what are you afraid of? So this pessimistic feeling that you have or this hopelessness, what are you afraid of? For me with the weight, I was afraid I was never going to lose the weight. I was afraid I was never going to return to my previous levels of energy. I was afraid that I would never be able to do all the things I wanted to do because I didn't have the energy to do them. I was afraid of the limitations that I felt that my body was placing on my life. So look at your fears. In the situation of my first business, I was afraid that I would never be able to leave that situation. And that was one of the hardest things I ever did. And it was also one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. And that was very complex, but that was one of my things. I was afraid I would never be able to get out of that situation. So once you've kind of dug up all the mind crap, all the stuff that you're afraid of, all your fears, your blocks, and look at your beliefs as well. So look at what are your beliefs around your ability to change your situation or situations or change the world or change your world. Once you've dug up all that crap and you've written it down so you can see it, you need to turn that on its head and focus on what do you want instead. So instead of pessimism, optimism. Instead of hopelessness, hopefulness. Instead of negative crap, positive stuff. But get specific, obviously. It's not as much as saying, I want to be optimistic. Really take all that crap that you dug up in the previous questions that I asked and turn those on their head by saying, what do you want instead? So Instead of being unhappy with my business, I want to be happy with my business. Instead of feeling hopeless about my life, I want to feel hopeful about my life. But really get into the specifics, like what would make you feel hopeful about your life? What would make you feel happy with your business, happy with your career, happy with your relationships? And really turn the focus away from what you don't want and focus on what you do want. And this is the other foundation of the mindset work that I do and that I've been talking about on this podcast for years. It's what do you want instead? Focus on what you do want rather than what you don't want. That is a massive, massive mindset shift in itself. And that alone will start to change your life. And that is the basis of law of attraction, The Secret. And I see so many people complaining about that book online or bad-mouthing it because they say, oh, you can't just focus on what you want and it'll magically happen. But I think the importance of that book and that film is that it got people, some people, focusing on what they do want rather than what they don't want. And to me, that is a massive, massive shift that cannot be undervalued. It's so important to focus on what we do want. So start focusing on what you do want. And as you do so, do the mindset work. So either do it with yourself, training a technique you can use with yourself, work with someone else to change your beliefs, to change your perspective, to help you to focus and take action on the things that you do want. So that's the foundation. Let's get a little bit more into some specifics. So another thing you can do to reduce pessimism is to stop comparing yourself to other people. Now, I know this is easier said than done, and I did a podcast episode about that not that long back. It was episode 239, and I'll link to that in the show notes. How to quit the comparison game for good. So if that's something that you really struggle with, listen to that episode and do some work on that, because comparing yourself to other people, you can't win with that. That is always a losing game. So think about who are the people that you compare yourself to. I mean, I know I in the past have compared myself to certain people in my life, and it's made me feel terrible. And I've had to take certain actions over the years to help myself to stop comparing myself to them. That has been a big thing for me, and I know that's a big thing for a lot of people. So stop comparing yourself to others. And again, you've got that podcast episode 239 if you want to delve deeper into that work. Reduce negativity in your life. So negative people. Get rid of the negative people in your life. Stop following them on social media, and you don't have to unfriend people on Facebook. You can just unfollow them. Stop seeing them in your life. Stop talking to them on the phone. Just start avoiding the negative people in your life or reducing the time that you spend with them or the contact that you have with them if you cannot get them out of your life for good. That is a massive, massive shift that you can do. You've got to believe that it's okay to do that. I think a lot of people have issues about removing people from their lives, but you are not obligated to have everyone in your life or certain people in your life. If someone is not contributing to your positive outlook in life, if they are actively dragging you down by their own pessimism, do give yourself permission to let go of those people in whatever way is most appropriate for you. But I think that's another massive thing that you can do to change your own outlook in life is removing negative people from your life. Also media. So pay attention to what things you've been watching, whether it's films, whether it's television, whether it's music. Pay attention to what you feed your brain. Don't watch sad stuff if it's going to bring you down. Don't watch stressful dramas if they make you feel tense and stressed out when you watch them. Focus on comedies. Watch stuff that makes you happy. Watch stuff that makes you laugh. Stop watching the news. I quit watching the news or listening to the news years and years ago, and it massively changed my life. If there's something important going on in the world, people will be talking about it on social media. You will hear about it. So there's no need for you to fill your brain with that kind of negative crap. If you have certain friends that are really politically active, complaining about political stuff all the time, unfollow them on social media. Pay attention to the stuff that you don't like seeing, that doesn't feed your brain in a positive way, and stop it. Unfollow those people. Unfollow them on Twitter. Unfollow them on Facebook. Get that stuff out of your visual field. A lot of people complain about how Facebook is a toxic place. It's not. It's not good. It's not bad. It is neutral. Your experience on Facebook and other social networks will be based on the people that you're following, the stuff that you read, the stuff that you choose to connect with. So if you are currently choosing to connect yourself with negative stuff that leads to your pessimism, make a different decision. Choose to connect yourself to the positive stuff. Unfollow all the stuff that does not make you happy. Unfollow all the stuff that does not fit the goals, the images, the visions, the stuff that you want to be focusing on. You get to choose what kind of experience you want to have. You get to choose what kind of media you want to consume. You get to choose how you want to feed your brain. You're going to feed it with crap. You're going to feed it with good stuff that lifts you up, helps you focus on the stuff that you want to achieve in life. Another thing that I find really, really useful, and I don't do this on a regular basis, I have tried to make it a part of my daily morning routine, but it just doesn't happen. So it's something that I do on and off as needed. And this is something that I have recommended to so many people in my sessions over the years, and so often I hear, "Oh, but I hate doing that." So if you hate doing it, don't do it, or find a different way to do it. But gratitude work, I find to be super, super useful in turning my mindset around from a pessimistic, negative, hopeless mindset to an optimistic, hopeful, positive, life-enhancing mindset. Do it however you want. Make a list of 10 things that you're grateful for. Make a list of 3 things. Make a list of 1 thing. Don't know if that's actually a list, if it's just 1 thing, but whatever. Pick 1 thing that you're grateful for and go with the basics. I remember when I was doing gratitude work every day for several weeks, and I really struggled with stuff, and I really had to go back to the basics. I have a house to live in. I have a roof over my head. I have a flushing toilet. Lots of people don't have that in the world. I have modern plumbing in my house, like stuff that we take for granted. That stuff can be really useful to do on your gratitude list as well, because there are people in the world that don't have this stuff, and it makes your life super easy. So gratitude work, I don't know why some people don't like it. I don't know what it is that triggers in people. If you know, please write in and let me know why you don't like gratitude work. I have heard from so many people that they don't like it. So I don't know. I just want to say, try a different way of doing it. Find a way to make it work for you. Do it on an as-needed basis like I do. You don't have to do it every day, but it's such a powerful way of completely shifting your mindset to the good stuff. Highly recommend gratitude work. So next, if you're feeling pessimistic because you're focusing on your problems, all the problems you have in life, make a list of those problems. Get your journal out, make a list of all your problems, leave some lines in between them. Maybe number them in order of priority, which ones are most important to resolve, or which ones are causing you the biggest stress, or which ones are making you feel most pessimistic. Order them in some way. And then focus on solutions, like what could you do? And just let yourself brainstorm and just write down whatever comes to mind. Focus on how you can solve these problems. And also focus on, for each of those problems or challenges, how can you get help? Who could help you with this? And getting help is not always something that I'm good at. And I know other people aren't good at it as well. So think about who you could ask for help. So I've been having this issue with, again, my first business partner, trying to cash out of that business. It's been going on for 10 years. I am owed a lot of money. It's been an annoying thing that's been going on in the back of my mind for the last 10 years. It makes me feel powerless and angry and just But things have finally started moving forward in that aspect, in part because I got help. I hired a lawyer, someone who is experienced in mediation, someone who is experienced in the legal world, someone who thinks like a lawyer thinks because she is a lawyer. And that's really, really helping me to move forward with that situation. So think about how you can get help, and that's help from friends, help from family, help from professionals. Even if you think you can't afford those professionals, write it down because that is a possible solution. So write down all the possible solutions, no matter how expensive they are, how wildly crazy or weird they are. Write down all the possible solutions. All the possible actions you could take to start taking steps towards solving those problems or overcoming those challenges. And then pick one. Either pick one action you could take for each problem or challenge, or just pick one challenge and work towards it. But do it. Take action. Either take action today, right now, pause this and do it, or after you finish this episode, or block out some time in your calendar today or this week to do it. But simply taking action towards the resolution of your problems or challenges can massively change your perspective from pessimism to optimism, because by taking action, you are moving towards the things that you want to experience and moving away from the things that you don't want to experience. In that same way, goal setting and visualization can be really, really helpful. So again, this goes back to, what do you want instead? What do you want in your life? And set practical goals for the things that you want to achieve, but also just give yourself permission to visualize. What is your ideal life? What is your ideal lifestyle? What do you want to be experiencing instead of what you're currently experiencing? How do you want to feel? How do you want to be? What do you want to do? What do you want to have? Just visualize all that good stuff and feel it. Just feel what that's going to give you. Feel how that's going to make you feel. Really tap into that and make that a part of your morning routine if you have one, or your evening routine. I would love to say that visualization is something that I do every day. It is not. It is something that I want to do more of. It is something that I sometimes do in my morning routine. And I find it really, really useful because it helps me to focus on what I do want. It helps me to focus on what I want to experience. It helps me to focus on what I want instead of what I currently have, or in addition to what I currently have. So visualization is really, really useful, and also goal setting to make sure that you take your actions that you want to take to achieve the things you want to achieve so you can experience the things you want to experience in your life. Review your goals on a regular basis. So as we're getting towards the end of the year now, I've made a list of all the goals and the stuff that I want to achieve and do over the next few months between now and the end of the year and into the new year. And I've written down my deadlines for them, and I've looked at, can I reasonably achieve this in this time period? What do I need to do? So for example, I do the Walk 1,000 Miles challenge. So the natural deadline for that is 31st of December, the end of the year. I have a spreadsheet where I enter all of my miles, and that keeps me on track. And I just make sure I update that every time I go on a nature walk. So I've got 76 miles to go between now and the end of the year. I have more than enough time to finish, but it is cutting it a little bit close. So what I have done is I've gone through my Google Calendar and I've made sure that I've blocked out enough time in my calendar to get those walks done and get those miles in. I've got my kickboxing grading coming up in mid-December, and I've not done as much preparation as I would have liked to. I've got my grading practice this Friday, and I'm not feeling 100% ready for it. So I've made a list of the stuff I need to do to prepare for that. I need to practice my line work. I need to practice my fitness. I need to do that daily. I need to be running on a regular basis. So I've gone to my Google Calendar and I've blocked out time to do that stuff. Some of that stuff needs to be done daily. Some of it needs to be done just a couple of times a week, but I've blocked out the time in my calendar. other stuff. I'm wrapping up the Bardic grade of my Druid training. So I've got some of my practicums to finish for that. I've got to review all my material. I've got to write a review and send it in so that I can apply for the next year. I've got enough time to do this, but I need to make sure it happens. And I need to make sure that happens as a part of my morning ritual. So again, that's already blocked out in my calendar because I have my morning ritual in my calendar every morning, but I need to make sure that this stuff happens within those time slots. And then other stuff like this podcast. So I'm aware that we're getting into the holiday season. That means that it's going to be hard for me to book calls with other people like Joe and Joanna. It means that I need to make sure I have enough time in my calendar to do my solo episodes because I'm going to the US in January and I am not going to do any recording from there, so I absolutely need to get this done before I go. So I've got at least 9 episodes that I need to get done and in the pipeline to be edited before I leave in January. Ideally, I would like to get them done by the end of the year or before the holidays because I tend to like to go into kind of hibernation over the holiday season. So I haven't done this yet, but I've gotten in touch with Joe and Joanna to see if we can get dates in the calendar. And I've got my dates for my solo episodes in the calendar, but I need to make sure that I've got all the dates for all the solo episodes and all those episodes. Anyway, you get the idea. Figure out what your goals are. Figure out what you need to do to achieve those goals. Block out the time in your calendar to make sure that it happens. So that's kind of the review kind of stuff that you need to do, not just now as we're approaching the end of the year, but on a regular basis to make sure that your goals happen. I would never have achieved the walk 10,000 miles. I will not be walking 10,000 miles this year or any year, but I would not have achieved the walk 1,000 miles challenge last year, nor would I have made as much progress on it this year if I hadn't created a spreadsheet to keep track of my miles. You've got to keep track of this stuff, otherwise you don't know where you are on your path to achieving your goals. So, the final thing that I wanted to talk about is make changes. As you move away from focusing on what you don't want to focusing on what you do want, make the necessary changes in your life. Take the actions you need to take to step by step, one step at a time, towards the things that you want to experience in your life. So those are my top suggestions on how to let go of pessimism for good. I really want to go into how to use mindset and energy healing techniques to shift to this optimistic perspective in life because this is the foundation of how I've shifted. So again, it's going back to focusing on what you want instead. What do you want to experience? What do you want to do? What do you want to be? What do you want to have? What do you want to believe about yourself? What do you want to experience? And if you're using a belief-based system like PSYCH-K, create belief statements based on what you want to experience and balance for them. If you're doing something more energy-focused, same thing. Create your vision of what you want, create your goal, create your outcomes, and then release the energy that you need to release in order to experience those things. It does not surprise me at all that someone who is trained in PSYCH-K or another technique like this is experiencing less pessimism because naturally, in training in those techniques or modalities, you are, and using them, assuming that you use them beyond the actual workshop, you are training your brain to focus on what you do want rather than what you don't want. And that is a massive, massive shift in and of itself, which is what I said in the beginning. I'm going to say it again. It's huge. Because so many people focus on what they don't want, and then you just get more of that, and it just drags you down into like a dark pit of pessimism. So I honestly believe that by using these mindset and energy healing techniques, not only can it help you shift to an optimistic perspective in life, but it can radically transform your life. So I hope that you found this episode interesting and useful, and I hope that it helps you to let go of pessimism for good. If you have any questions like this, I welcome any podcast topics as always. You can email me at holly@hollywharton.com. If you would love to join me on Patreon, I would love that too. Head over to patreon.com/hollywharton. You can join me there. Membership starts at just $1 a month and you'll get exclusive access to content I don't share anywhere else, including a monthly Q&A and all kinds of other stuff, including done-for-you energy work, depending on what tier you sign up at. So I would love to see you there. That's patreon.com/hollywharton. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts. It would mean the world to me. Or recommend it to someone else. I would love for more people to discover this podcast, more people like you. Next week's episode, I am not sure what it is. I'm hoping it will be an episode with Joe Casey. We have had to reschedule our recording of it, so we shall see. It might be me again, it might be Joe. So tune in next week to find out, and thank you for listening. And remember to visit hollywharton.com/280 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollywharton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.